This is Mario Tennis Power Tour for the Game Boy Advance. It's one of my favorite games of all time, and I mean that honestly. I played it again just last fall and it holds up surprisingly well. It's essentially a tennis RPG in which you play as a young tennis player rising through the ranks at the Royal Tennis Academy. And this is Mario Tennis Aces, the latest game in the Mario Tennis series. Like a lot of gamers, I was hyped when Nintendo announced this game, because they specifically said it would have a new story mode. Nintendo even noted how it would be the first Mario Tennis game since Power Tour to have a story. For better or worse, that kind of statement sets a certain expectation. Fans were on board for more Power Tour, but as details about the story came out, it became clear that Aces would be something different. We wouldn't get to play as an original character, instead only controlling Mario. The story itself deals with an ancient tennis-worshipping kingdom and a magical racket with mind control powers. Not at all like the simple yet charming story of becoming a champion. So now that the game is out, it's fair to say the audience is split. The gameplay is good, but the adventure mode, as they call the promised story mode, is hardly a story at all. It's more like a loose concept connecting a series of minigames and boss battles designed to train you on the tennis mechanics so you're better prepared for the multiplayer modes. Maybe it wouldn't be a big deal if Nintendo hadn't sold us on the idea of a story mode. Excluding a few flaws, the game itself plays great and will surely find a large audience. It's just a major letdown to fans who hoped this would be the return of RPG-style Mario Tennis. We know Nintendo, and specifically Camelot, the developer of the Mario Tennis games, can do better, because we've seen them do it. The history of Mario Tennis begins not with Nintendo, but with Sega. Camelot Software Planning, the developers of every Mario Tennis title, began life as a subsidiary of Sega, under the name Sonic Software Planning, where they produced multiple titles in the Shining series of RPGs. In 1995, Sonic split from Sega and changed their name to Camelot. Over the next couple of years, they finished their work on the Shining series, while also developing games for Sony's PlayStation. The first title, Beyond the Beyond, was one of the first JRPGs released for the system. However, its traditional approach to the genre, and mostly 2D visuals, left much to be desired by Western audiences. For their next PS1 title, Camelot once again jumped genres and released the first installment in the Everybody's Golf series, released in the US as Hot Shots Golf. Everybody's Golf was received well enough to launch an entire franchise, and even earn a spot on Game Informer's Top 100 Games of All Time list back in 2001. Shortly after, Camelot struck a deal with Nintendo to produce Mario-themed sports games, beginning with Mario Golf. Released on the Nintendo 64 in 1999, it played like something of a Mario-themed version of Everybody's Golf. It was a big success, eventually selling around 1.5 million copies worldwide. Camelot's deal with Nintendo also called for a Game Boy Color port of the game, and for that one, Camelot decided to get creative. They dug into their experience of RPGs and worked some of the simplest mechanics into the portable golf title, creating something wholly unique for its time. While the N64 game only allows for various golf modes chosen from the menu, the Game Boy Color version lets you move an original character around the world from a top-down perspective. You get to choose how you want to play the game, like you would in a typical RPG. You can talk to NPCs, take on challenges, play matches. It's all up to you. Every time you win a match or a challenge, you earn experience points which are used to level up your character and various stats. Not only do you get to choose either a male or female character to play as, your character actually has a story, as they set out to become a top golfer. The Game Boy Color version was incredibly well received at the time, with IGN even scoring it a perfect 10 out of 10. Not bad for a scrappy little golf game. The connection between golf and RPG playstyles makes a certain amount of sense. When you break it down, golf is turn-based. You take a turn making your shot, then your opponent takes their turn, and eventually one of you sinks a putt. Similarly, the most common RPG mechanic is a turn-based battle system, built out of selecting options from a menu. If you squint a little, you can see how Camelot originally made the connection. Following Mario Golf, Camelot came back for round 2 with the original Mario Tennis, again first on the N64, with a Game Boy Color version to follow. The N64 game is perhaps best known for introducing Waluigi to the Mario universe but it also brought back Princess Daisy and Birdo, and it is the last original playable appearance of Donkey Kong Jr. The Game Boy Color game featured an extra story mode about, you guessed it, an aspiring tennis player looking to make it to the top. You start in the junior class and defeat opponents to work your way to the senior class, then the varsity class, and eventually a championship tournament. Stat management becomes crucial in this game as you increase things like your speed and shot power to get an edge on your opponent. Doing Mario Tennis as an RPG is an interesting choice because it's not really turn-based. Mario Tennis is more like an action RPG where you fight your opponent with a series of well-timed combos. Instead of swinging a sword, Mario swings a tennis racket. Both of these early Mario sports titles were successful enough to warrant sequels, and in 2004 and 2005, Camelot released Mario Golf Advance Tour and Mario Tennis Power Tour. The Game Boy Color games are good, but they don't hold up very well, and these releases should be considered the definitive versions. They're basically souped up versions of their predecessors, using the same basic mechanics with improved graphics, sound, and minigame options. Once again, you're a new player on your way to becoming a champion, but these games acknowledge the existence of the previous titles, so if you played those, you'll bump into some familiar characters. Although the stories retread the same essential ground as the earlier titles, there are more unique characters with lives and personalities to interact with, giving you smaller stories to discover. Advance Tour has an extra bit of charm to it, as they openly acknowledge the existence of Mario in the game, and how he's your eventual goal. While Power Tour plays coy with its tie to Mario, which is a bit silly since it's called Mario Tennis, curiously, IGN's review for Advance Tour makes it sound better than the original Mario Golf, but they scored it half a point less. Review scores, can't live with them, can't argue online without them. Now that we have some background, let me just get casual for a sec and gush about Mario Tennis Power Tour for a second. This game is tennis distilled. It uses simple button combinations to give you multiple options during a match. You can use the D-pad to aim your shots, and once you understand the difference between, say, a topspin shot and a slice shot, you can send your ball curving around your opponent. It's also surprisingly tough at the end, so even if you get total mastery and never lose a match, you'll still have to work for it. The art is simple and clean in a pixel style that still looks great today. When you train through the minigames, you can earn new power shots, which are special shots that either hit your opponent hard or save you in a pinch. Players of Aces will recognize these as the ancestors of trick shots and special shots. Camelot did a great job filling in the world of the game. The Academy feels like a living place, populated with characters who have their own lives. Being able to explore the Academy and take on challenges at your own pace helps you to feel like you're really a student at a school for tennis. And then there's the side characters, who feel like people with their own unique hopes, dreams, and relationships. It's a level of detail you wouldn't expect to see in a lot of handheld games, let alone one that's a port of a competitive sports title. But what I like the most about Power Tour is the feeling of accomplishment you get as you level up your character and take on the Academy. When your character ranks up and finally wins that trophy, you feel like you really earned it. Framing what is essentially a tournament mode with a story about a particular person trying to win helps the player have more investment in the game. You take on the role of your character, and their accomplishments are yours. That sense of ownership over a character and the accomplishment you feel for making them a champion is something many fans have wanted back in Mario Tennis for years now. Disappointment with Aces comes from that place. When Nintendo announced that Aces would have a story mode, it sounded like a return to form, but it's not. The adventure mode in Aces is certainly fun, but it's a disjointed series of levels, not an explorable world. The challenges you take on feel more like the side modes you'd find in Power Tour, and not matches against your rivals that feel like they have weight and importance. While the earlier games cast you as a player you get to mold into your own champion, Mario starts out as a great tennis player, which makes it harder to feel like you're actually developing as you play. Aces doesn't even let you choose which stats to improve as you level up. Adventure mode feels like an attempt to give some structure to training players for the multiplayer modes. Maybe that's okay, as the console tennis games have always been more multiplayer focused. The two parallel series are clearly different. Camelot's Hiroyuki Takahashi spoke about the difference way back in 2004 after the release of Power Tennis for the GameCube, when he told IGN, quote, "The basic concept behind those RPG elements is that they are best suited to a deep single-player experience, which matches perfectly with the characteristics of the Game Boy hardware. But to be honest, Based on our plans and the development schedule for Mario Power Tennis, we wouldn't have been able to include it this time if we wanted to. Both of those sentences are hugely revealing, because it shows how Camelot sees the Mario Tennis series in its various forms. The handheld games were designed for solo players, since multiplayer was more difficult on that hardware. Meanwhile, console games are multiplayer focused, because that's where you can get a bunch of people around a TV, or across a network. But the second part of that quote reveals another issue. The reality is that programming a 3D explorable RPG like Power Tour would require a lot more time and resources than Camelot and Nintendo probably want to spend at this point. The scale would be significantly larger than anything they've attempted before. Adventure mode is more like a compromise. It's a single-player mode with a story, but it's bare bones because doing anything more would have significantly lengthened the development time. It's not really a one-to-one comparison when you look at that versus the investment in creating the 2D games. Maybe they should have spent more time on it for the sake of fans, but that just doesn't seem to be the game Camelot wanted to make, or more cynically, the game Nintendo wanted to sell. With the Switch marketed as both a home console and a portable machine, now would seem the perfect time to change that. You could cater to the handheld audience who wants the in-depth solo experience, and the home audience that wants to play with family and friends. The problem is that Nintendo has done a lot of work to promote the social aspects of the Switch, so creating an in-depth solo experience from a franchise that doesn't really require it, it's clearly not their priority. As I said, Aces is still a blast of a game. I even played it out in public at Too Many Games. It's great to see how easy it is for people to pick up and have fun. It plays exactly like I want it to mechanically. I just wish there was more of a real story mode. But with the existence of games like Golf Story, maybe that means good things for a future Mario Golf title. But we'll just have to wait and see how that shakes out. In the meantime, let me know your feelings on Mario Tennis Aces, and if you've played any other RPG-style Mario sports games. If you have, which one's your favorite? If you're spending some time with Aces, which characters do you play? I play a lot as Rosalina. I like how her movement works. She's pretty fluid, flies around, which I think is really cool. Anyway, give me a like if you liked the video, subscribe so you'll be notified when the next video is out, and I will see you all next time.